Have you ever had a massive blow up with your husband where trust felt shattered in the moment? And then, no matter how much you try to fix it, things just don't feel the same. Have you experienced that recently or at some point in the relationship in your marriage? If you've been married for some time, I'm sure you probably can recall that moment when that happened because sometimes when these moments occur, it's hard to forget where we were, what we were doing, what was said, and on, right? So, in today's video, I'm going to share 3 ways to rebuild that trust after a heated argument. I know how frustrating this can be. 1 minute, everything seems fine, and then a disagreement happens, and it feels like the emotional connection is gone. And here's the thing, you're not alone in this. Many wives, like yourself and others that I've worked with, in our interaction conversations, they're struggling with this same thing. But I want you to stay with me because I've got a solution that can bring back the peace and connection. Now, if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Kingsley Grant, a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified relationship coach. And what you'll hear from me today comes from nearly 2 decades of experience working with spouses just like you, and from my own marriage of 39 years as of this recording. So we've had in my own marriage our ups and downs, and I have to give credit to God for his grace. Oh, for his grace in helping us get through the tough spots like what I've been describing today. And I'll share more on that as we go along. Now, before we jump in, I want to let you know that I have a free gift for you at the end of this video that I want you to stay around for because I will make sure that I'll let you know how to have that at the end of this video. Now, you could skip ahead and grab the guide, but I promise you that you'll get much more out of it if you stick around for the whole video. It'll make more sense. It will basically kind of tie things together for you and make that gift a much more appreciative. So I can guarantee that. So here's a challenge. When we argue with our spouse, right, with our, in this case, your husband, especially over something big, it feels like trust is broken. Something happens, something snaps, something just kind of occurs at that moment. It's almost like, how do we come back from that? It feels like this is that death blow to the relationship. Am I, does that make sense? Do you feel like that sometimes? The emotional connection feels distant, and it's like you're walking on eggshells. I cannot tell you how many couples, have told me, both husband and wives, but I've also heard from that wife and husband separately who said, man, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my house. I just have to be watch every word that I say, make sure I said the right word. And I'm constantly editing and because before I speak or before I do something, because something like this have happened and they now feel like they're walking on eggshells, unsure of how to bridge the gap. That's where many times when they do come in to see me and talk to me about the issues, they're unsure now. How do we bridge this gap? you know, it's interesting that in my new book that's coming out, The Joyful Wife, I speak about what I call the intimacy bridge, and that's its idea of how do you get from where you are to a more connected feeling in the relationship. And I talk about 3 things in that book, and you will be. I want to make sure that you know when it's coming out, so you want to subscribe to this channel, so you will hear me talk about it here on this channel when it's out. But the three things I talk about in that on the intimacy bridge to get from where you are to where you want to go. I mentioned about how do you embrace it, express it, and embody it, right? So embrace it, express it, and embody it. Those three, what I call the milestones or the mile markers, are what's going to help you to get across that bridge. But that's for the book, so that's not what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to share with you though how to do that in this video, Because what happened is that you want to reconcile, you want to change things. That's why you're watching and listening, because things are just not the same. Something feels broken. Here's what I find, that why I tend to appeal to you as a wife more so than to your husband, because your husband is like me and in many ways. And here's how I know that. Number one, he's a man, so I know that he's like me in that regards, and I know what men needs from their wives for the most part, right? There are some general things that every man, every husband need, and then it's not just sex, right? So uh, I guess most people will go there, but no, it's a lot more than that. And as a husband, I know what it's like to be in a relationship 24/7, basically with your wife, with a wife, my wife, and you with your husband. So I think that I have a position where why I speak to you, because I want to equip you, I want to elevate you, I want to empower you. I want you to be the one, because you are more powerful than you actually think or give yourself credit for. Your impact, your influence is amazing. I say this more often than not, that the husband might be the head, but you are the neck that turns the head. Yes, you are. And here's what one of my scriptural references to kind of help reinforce this idea. And in Proverbs 14, verse 1, right? I want to highlight this to you. It's very important. It says, "A wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands." So I might substitute the word woman by put wife and say, "A wise wife builds her home, but a foolish wife tears it down with her own hands." And you, as a wife, which I consider to be wise, because you're watching this, you're listening to this, so you are in the category of the wise. You have the ability to lead the way in rebuilding trust. I believe that, just like other wives that I've worked with, you're the one who can bring healing to your marriage. And I'm here to help you to do that, because you're more sensitive to what's going on. You're more aware of what's going on. Sometimes your husband, like me, can be sometimes oblivious. You ask us, I mean, how's your relationship? Oh, everything is fine. And you're thinking like, are you kidding me? Maybe you're out with someone and your husband is saying, just acting as if nothing is wrong, nothing is broken, and he's just acting as if, and you're thinking, are you kidding me? Are you serious? Right? Have that ever happened to you? Yeah, and I know, because I've listened to many wives and I've watched them, the dynamic, and heard them talk about this very thing. So before I dive into the three ways to rebuild trust, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so now. And if you're finding this helpful, hit the thumbs up button to say, hey, you're with me on this journey. Okay. Now the fastest way to rebuild trust is by embracing the mind of Christ. Embracing the mind of Christ. This is one of the things I teach about in my Build Happier Marriage by Design boot camp. And you'll hear more about that at the end, how to get on the wait list for that. Because I'm going to have this wait list going, because I'm going to be doing this boot camp at different times. And so you want to be made known, be made aware of that. And so to be notified. So make sure that you check out how to be on that, because this is one of the things I teach about as the main pillars basically in this idea of rebuilding trust. And so when I say it's the fastest and it's the most impactful way to rebuild trust in your relationship, it's not just by chance. I make a case for that, right? By embracing the mind of Christ. When you align your heart with his, it changes your approach to conflict, as you know. And if you've ever had to do something like this, you know that it overrides a number of things, and it helps you to reconnect with your husband. This is a foundation of the new way that I teach to rebuild marriages: walking in grace, forgiveness, and understanding. So many times, what you may hear from the world is how to do things a bit differently. And I tell you, that is not sustainable. It doesn't allow your heart to truly heal. It may allow you to feel equal or even, right? Get even kind of thing, but you don't have the healing in your heart, and you know something is still off. So when I talk about this idea of walking in grace, forgiveness, and understanding, it is from that mindset of Christ that brings this about. And that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about Happier Marriage by Design Bootcamp. And let me tell you, this is just one of the five pillars that I teach in that program. So imagine what your marriage could look like if you had all five. Okay, so here's the old way of how things normally goes. You might try talking it out endlessly, or are you waiting for your husband to apologize first? But what tend to happen? And here's what I do know: if you keep on doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results, it's called what? Insanity. So what happens is this is when you're waiting or you're talking things over and over, this usually leads to more frustration and distancing in the relationship. Would that be accurate? Have you experienced that? I know that I've experienced that in my at different times in my own marriage. The new way is about leading with grace and empathy and rebuilding trust through biblical principles. It's like changing the engine of your car. You'll get to your destination faster and smoother if you have a more trustworthy and a more, I would say aligned engine, but a working engine, right? The oil is changed or parts are changed, and you feel like you could go on a long distance journey because you feel more confident in that car. And if you won't feel confident in that car if the engine is not working properly, right? So I know what you might be thinking, or let me just say it. I can guess what you might be thinking right now. But you're thinking, oh, Kingsley, it feels like I'm always the one to make the first move, right? Maybe you're feeling that I'm the one who make the first move. And yes, sometimes it does feel that way. But here's the thing: embracing grace doesn't mean you're always the one at fault. It doesn't mean you're taking responsibility and somehow seeming like you are the one that created the mess. No, it's not that. It means you're choosing to lead with love and wisdom. And that's what the mind of Christ does. When you embrace the mind of Christ, that's what it does. It allows you to lead with love and wisdom. As you know, love overcomes, right, all shortcomings, right? It is the powerful thing. It's the most powerful thing that we have at our disposal. The Bible speaks about many times, love your enemies, right? Do good to those who despitefully use you and speak all manner of evil against you. That's the mind of Christ. And God gives us the grace to do that when we're unable to do it in our own strength. Now, suppose you said, Kingsley, I'm not even gonna I'm tuning out right now. Well, I want you, before you do that, listen to this right here. If nothing changes, what's at stake is what? More arguments, more distancing, more years of frustration. You're signing up actually for that if nothing changes. And you know that firsthand. I'm speaking to the choir here. You know that. You know that if nothing changes, nothing changes. And you might even risk creating unhealthy patterns that affect your kids and your overall family dynamic. Because I guess sometimes what we don't realize, we are acting in a way that we've seen modeled for us in our own family of origin, right? And so, but I get it though. I get it. Sometimes what's holding you back, um, sometimes it's how you've been taught to deal with conflict, and you're thinking that's the way to do it because you've seen, or maybe past hurts you've never fully healed from is also a contributing factor. It can be hard to step into this new way. And I'm going to say up front, first to tell you, it can be hard to step into this new way when you've never seen it modeled before, or when you feel like you've tried everything. Trust me, as I've said before, in my almost 40 years of marriage as of this recording, I've been there. I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. I have seen it front row seat with many couples that I've worked with, families I've worked with. I've heard it And I've watched it sometimes right before my very eyes happening. I remember a time when in my own relationship, that we had our own difficult moments, and those moments were not easy. I mean, some of those moments were not easy. Some were not as bad as others, as you probably have had in your own marriage. And I wasn't always the one to take the first step. And I don't say this in a manner of any pride in this, or any I would say any, I don't take any pleasure in this, because Kingsley, come on, you're supposed to be the mature one here. But I'm gonna be confess and be transparent. I'm not the one who always take the first step, but it changed when I began to learn this very same thing I'm telling you. It wasn't until I started seeking God's wisdom and see what Jesus did and what he taught, that I understood how to break the cycle of blame and frustration. It changed everything. And it's something we now practice in our marriage. And I've taught so many other couples and helped hundreds of couples and wives like yourself basically embrace the same idea, and they too have had great success in their marriages. Have all? No, I'm going to be honest, not all, but a majority who have actually implemented the way that I've taught them, and they saw and had insight and recognized this is the new way. It's made a difference in their marriage. So now I'm going to share then one actionable step that can help you start rebuilding trust today. And I promise it's not as hard as you might think. So here's that one actionable step. I would say a tip, so to speak, but a very, it's more than a tip. It's an action plan. So start by praying for your spouse. And you may have heard me say this before. Pause and pray. Pause and pray is one of the things I also teach in the boot camp, right? Because I think it's so important. And I love the scripture that says in James chapter 1, it says, be quick to hear, slow to speak. It's almost like pause before you respond. And I'm simply saying pause and pray. And you heard me right about that. When you pray for your husband, it softens your heart and opens a door for healing. See, it's not just about praying and ask God to change him, but also God softens my heart, soften my heart, change my heart, because I love this phrase that I've used many times. It's not original to me, but it says this: if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at changes. But the only way to change the way you look at things is when your heart can be changed, and God does that. It's like trying to repair a broken fence. I mean, you start with the posts, which are the foundation, right? You don't repair the top. What if you know about fence, right? I'm not saying you don't, but you don't just repair the top portion. You want to make sure that the posts are firmly in the ground. We have an old fence when we first bought our house years and years and years ago, and there was a fence around the house, and what I mean partial. Let's put partial fence if you want to call it that way. It was wooden, and the post began to rot. And then before long, the whole fence, the wind, just a little wind that blew, and the whole thing came down. Why? Because the posts were rotted at the bottom. And so to repair that, we had to then first repair the post, replace a post, because it became the foundation, the anchors on which a fence was able to stand against the wind that blew. So prayer is the foundation for rebuilding trust. You'll start seeing changes even in your husband, in your husband, but also even if he doesn't change overnight. Because what happened? You'll be given a new set of lens through which to look, and you'll see things that you may not be seeing right now. And by taking this one step, you'll start creating new patterns in your marriage, ones where trust is built, not destroyed. And that's something that your children, if they're still younger, will take with them into their own relationships. So if you want to break a cyclical thing that's being passed down in your own family, this is one of those ways to change that dynamic. Right? Let it start with you. You'll be breaking generational patterns of conflict and creating a legacy of grace. Imagine that. Imagine that could happen if you're able to do this, right? So this is a good news about what it is I'm asking you to do. And I believe that you recognize this is for your own good, but also for your the tone, the family, the tone of the home, your children, and on, your health, your emotional, mental, physical, spiritual health. I mean, you name it. The list of things that becomes better when you're able to do that. So let me just kind of give you a recap then of these things I believe that would help you to rebuild trust after something like this, as I described, happened. Number one, lead with grace and forgiveness. Number two, rebuild trust by praying for your husband. And number three, understand that embracing the mind of Christ is the key to rebuilding your marriage. Now, before we kind of wrap things up here, I want you to now get the free gift I mentioned before. And it's a free gift. It's a Christian wife's guide to a happier marriage. A Christian wife's guide to a happier marriage. And if you're not a Christian and you still want to get it, you'll find they're valuable. The thing that, from a Christian perspective, you'll be able to find some biblical verses there as well that help to reinforce the thoughts that are mentioned in this guide. And you can get your copy at buildyourhappiermarriage.com/guide. Buildyourhappiermarriage.com/guide. Okay. And I want to remind you that you're not alone in this. You're one connection skill away from a deeper, more peaceful, and joyful marriage. And I share with you today that connection skill. So I want you to remember now to hit that subscribe button, because next week, or next time, I'll share the secret to maintaining peace during tough conversations. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. Now, make sure you watch this other video right here and share this one and this one with at least one other person. Here's a strong verse of scripture that could serve as an anchor for you. Psalm 127, verse 1. Unless the Lord builds a house, the builders labor in vain. So let him build our marriages. And Galatians 6 says, if we don't faint, if we don't give up, we shall reap the harvest. We will get the good things if we don't give up. So let God help you to build your marriage. God bless you and keep you. And I'll see you on the next video. God bless. Peace out.